Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Excelis Blue Cross Blue Shield, providing members with options for in-person and virtual care, creating ways to connect to care when and where it's needed. Learn more at excelisbcbs.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour is being made today as I look out the window here in High Falls. Another gloomy and rather chilly day here in Rochester, and if you're like me, you're eager to get outside and get planting to start your spring. Fluctuating temperatures and unseasonably cold and wet weather have created challenges for people making plans for their lawns and gardens. But if you have questions, we're going to try to have some answers for you, both in the nuts and bolts of what we are doing and maybe, spiritually, metaphysically, getting our heads right as we head into the heart of planting season. Our guests helping us understand everything we should know to get flowers and plants surviving and thriving. And I'd like to first welcome Petra Page-Mann, who is the co-founder, a friend, and neighbor of Fruition Seeds. It's been a little while, and it is always great to have Petra on the program. Petra, how are you?
I'm so delighted to be back in the connection.
And tell people again, you are the co-founder of Fruition Seeds. You stepped away, but all love, all good there, right?
Yeah, Fruition still is alive and well. We gift seeds now rather than grow and selling seeds. So for the first 12 years, we grew seeds and we sold them. And now we are growing and gifting them. It's very confusing and it's very marvelous.
Okay. But people can still access Fruition Seeds.
Absolutely. We have all those same hundreds of varieties, regionally adapted flowers, vegetables, herbs, fruit, and nut trees. And yeah, we are sharing them rather than in the context of an online sales platform or like at Lori's or many marvelous places where we had racks of seeds. We share seeds in the context of these embodied practices where we spend, maybe it's 20 minutes with fourth graders or it's 2 hours with adults where we're sharing stories, longings, we're singing songs. I like to say our seeds are more expensive than ever because we have to feel our feelings and receive them as gifts, which means these seeds aren't mine to give you, and they're not yours now that they're in your hands. When you receive a gift, Mary Oliver and, oh my goodness, Indigenous grandmothers like Robin Wall Kimmerer remind us that we have a twofold and joyful obligation to say thank you, but also to keep the gift moving. And so it's a great big exploration of how we grow ourselves as well as our gardens. But yeah, all those seeds we are still growing and still sharing.
So
in little different ways.
I have to ask you, Petra, because you built what was a business and now it is something different, because anyone who has listened to your talks, who's gotten to know you, who's gone sitting around maybe a campfire or just talking to you about how you view the world, my sense is that your heart is not in the business side of things, and that you feel you have some strong feelings about the way sort of society is structured. And realistically now, I want to hear from how that's going and how you're doing and how, this change of model is working. And if you feel like, the doubters were like, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to sustain? And how are you doing?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. Thank you for caring. I'd like to say, when people say, how is it going? The flippant part of me says, oh, it's going fabulously when you do what you love and get to explore and grow. It's the best feeling in the world. And I don't think that's exactly what they mean, though. I think most people, when they say, how is it going? They're saying, how are you surviving in an economic model where if you're not commodifying yourself, if you're not buying and selling and playing the game,
yes,
as we are very specifically taught, that you're going to be out in the street and your needs are going to make you needy, and that's going to make us all in danger. And so, there's a lot more to the story, to be sure. And I'm pleased to say it's been a year and a half, and I am here so graciously, gracefully saying, "Hi, my name is Petra." We're surviving, and we're definitely thriving. And it's complicated to wrap our minds around. We're not pretending to not have needs. We just don't want to confuse our needs with our perceived social market value. So separating our needs and our gifts from our perceived market value. We're asking not to be paid, but to be sustained. And so, if we live in a world full of gifts, I don't know if you've felt the sun on your face recently.
Just a little bit, very
And
briefly.
I know it's so true. I don't know if you've received an invoice from the sun yet.
Okay, fair.
And so there's this wonderful thing that happens also, when we invite people over for dinner to our homes, and we would never dream of charging people for that meal. And when we kiss our children on the forehead at night, we're also not keeping track of that. And so there's this thing that happens when we trust and when we love and when we want to be in relationship with people where we don't expect direct, immediate compensation. And we just want to get back to that. Perhaps the only radical thing that we're doing is saying that we trust and we love you. And that has been the way that our species has shown up and shared and cared for a couple million years, depending what flavor anthropologist you're asking. And it's only very recent, this experiment of markets and of charging anything or expecting one for one valuation at all. And I don't know how, it always makes me chuckle when people are like, "How's it going?" And I'm like, "No, really, how's capitalism going for you?" 'Cause I see a lot of really hungry, sad, scared, lonely, very fearful people. And so and we're very fortunate, Evan, in that we were very legible for the first 12 years as Fruition, where we grew seeds and we sold them. And that's normal enough for people to trust us. And as we've moved into a much less legible frame of gifting seeds, of abstaining from selling seeds, I feel so thankful that we have all of these people that know and care about us and knew how to connect and relate to us in a much more relatable way over, the wilds of the internet and social media and email. And so I feel so thankful that now we get to explore this with people who already have so much of an experience of what we have to offer and trust that, well, maybe they've gone off the deep end a little bit, but we still care enough to lean in and be in conversation. And so people are sustaining us in extraordinary ways. We don't, charge for our seed packets, and we are encouraging people to trust that there's nothing you had to do to earn being alive or this next breath. and and also there's nothing you need to do to earn these seeds or to compensate us for these seeds. And if we want to shake that coat, that hard, dense seed coat of being a consumer, of this is mine and that is yours. And oh my goodness, can we earn this? Can now we own whatever this may be? As we're shaking off these hard seed coats of consumerism, separating us from ourselves, from our gifts and the gifts that we have to share with each other. And we step into the cloak of sustaining each other. Yeah, it's certainly not straightforward and is not always easy. It takes a community of practice and circles of trust that we're not culturally conditioned to know how to cultivate in our culture. But yeah, it's tremendous how people are showing up, and we have our needs. We share our needs as relational needs, material needs, and financial needs. You'll find them under our contributions part of our website, so that when people do want to sustain us, there are very clear ways, that we are asking to be sustained, but not because we've done anything different than anyone else. To me,
In a moment, I'm going to bring in Evan Hoyt, who is a grower and amateur seed grower. He's a researcher at the University of Vermont. We're going to talk to Evan not only about growing, but we're going to talk to Evan and Petra about growing, and we're going to talk about gift culture. And that's kind of, at the root of what Petra's talking about here. What you're describing, the way that people have sustained you, even when you made it absolutely clear that they can have seeds and they need not compensate you, and that is up to them. I'm reminded of a person I met years ago, Petra, in my early reporting days in Rochester. Someone said, you got to go down and meet this gentleman named Walter, and he's working at a gas station on West Henrietta Road, and he is just the most kind person to everyone. And he doesn't get paid a lot, but he loves the work, and he doesn't own a car, and he lives in a rural area, and he gets to work every day by hitchhiking, what we would call hitchhiking. And he always gets there, and he gets there on time, and he relies on the kindness of strangers, and it always works out. And I went down and I talked to him, and he said, I'm a simple guy. I don't need a lot. And it's amazing if you rely on the kindness of people, how surprised you'll be. So I said, can I just spend a morning with you? Can I come down and can I ride with you? And he said, yeah. And so before dawn one morning, standing out in the cold, waiting with Walter, I thought, who's picking up hitchhikers? Who's doing? And we got to work on time, early, in fact. People were so kind. And Walter says, we are so jaundiced in the way we think of how we think of one another, that if you stop and you make an assumption that people will be kind to you if you just ask them to be, and if you're kind to them, that things will work out better than you believe possible. And in a way, I'm thinking of Walter when you tell these stories, Petra, because I think a lot of people hear what you're doing and they think, boy, you're going to be in real trouble. And you're saying you're thriving after a year and a half. You're thriving. Yeah?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, so here we are.
Walter, thanks for living it as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen Walter in years, but I had a different view of humanity that day, and some days we need to shake ourselves loose of that. We're talking to Petra Page-Mann. Let me welcome Evan Hoyt on the line with us, who is a grower. He's a researcher at the University of Vermont. Evan, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
So, Petra, you know everybody in growing circles, right? Do you know Evan?
Know and love. May or may not have married the man.
So this is someone who is close to Petra, of course, as well here, and similar perspectives. Evan, it's great to have you. As much as we love Petra, it's great to have you, Evan, and thank you both for being with us. And let me just start by asking both of you. I'll start with Evan here. Are you despondent about this spring weather? For everybody who wants to get growing and get started here, are you frustrated? And is there a way to kind of hang in there when spring won't kind of get going, or even frankly, it gets going and then we get a freeze? Everyone's very worried about a lot of different crops. How are you taking the spring? What's your mindset?
Oh, I got to be honest. I live out east in the Green Mountains of Vermont, and spring is going quite springingly for us. So I can't complain myself. But it's a long journey out of winter, and it requires a lot of patience for sure, even on a good year like this.
Petra, how are you viewing? You're always so positive when we talk, but it is hard sometimes when it feels like we just can't quite get loose of this spring and get out of this winter. How are you feeling?
Oh my goodness. I believe in the plants that are growing. And have you noticed there are so many plants growing all over the place, and not all the plants are growing yet. And I love this time of year because the plants that are growing are the ones that are undaunted by the frost, the ones that don't mind if it's going to be 27 degrees. And if they do have a leaf that minds, they're going to know how to regrow that leaf next week, tomorrow. And I just love these plants that early spring. And there's so many, of course, in the fields, in the forests, but even in our gardens. I've been eating garden soil for over a month. Garden sorrel, like bright, think like lemons in a leaf. Such a luscious plant. And they are so incredibly tenacious, and they've been snowed on so many times, and they're still green and continuing to grow. Same with the spinach that we have overwintered since September. We planted them and we've been eating them all throughout the winter, and cilantro too. And that regional adaptation is what we are saving seeds for, you know? So we're literally sowing these seeds. Not all of them survive, but the ones that do, we're eating along the way. And but not to the extent that they aren't going to make babies. We're saving seeds of the most resilient of these plants that are undaunted by the cold and are becoming a part of their DNA is this adaptation so exquisitely. So there very soon we'll be planting more seeds that certainly have greater preferences for more consistent warmth. But there's a part of me that endlessly rejoices in this season when, the kale is absolutely here for us, and cilantro, and that cold hardy spinach, and oh my gosh, the radishes that are completely undaunted.
Every time we talk CSAs, somebody calls and complains and says there's too much kale, Petra. So do you want to describe what you do with kale to make it as enjoyable as you find it?
Admittedly, it depends on the season. In July, I'm much less excited about kale than I am if it's been frosted at least 17 times. So this is the time of year when, if it's overwintered, it's so sweet and so tender. But even if you're not sure that you like kale, I think if you add enough garlic and balsamic vinegar and delicious fat to anything with just the right amount of salt, it's divine. Also, try just blending it with nuts. If you eat cheese with cheese, turn it into a pesto, a green sauce that suddenly you don't have to think about fibers. It's just this like fibers between your teeth or a chewiness that you might not love. It's a delicious green sauce that you can add other flavors like lemon. You can add basil to it or cilantro, parsley, and turn it into an emerald green, not quite pesto.
All right. Evan, are you a pesto fan? Are you a kale fan?
I am a kale fan, yeah. I don't make a lot of kale pesto, but we do a lot of really long stir fries, kind of like you would with collards, where you cook it with onions for a long time until it gets nice and sweet again. So when we get a little tired of kale in the winter, sometimes we'll just let it simmer for a long time. And we love it. We love kale.
I got an email from CY I'm going to get to in a second because we're going to get back to the question of gift culture. But this is always what we ask Petra. We always start with, sort of the nuts and bolts. We'll ask Petra, we'll ask Evan about this for people who have not grown from seed before or you want to get started. But there's a lot of different ways I know to still access the expertise of people like Petra. Edgar writes to say, Petra is leading a workshop called Sow Seeds and Sing Songs at the Folk Art Guild's Craft Weekend in August. And for more information, check out the exhibit currently showing at Rundell Public Library or at folkartguild.org. So already looking ahead to August, Edgar is, Petra. But do you want to describe for our audience how you think people can get started from scratch, from if they've never done something like this before and they want to get going? What are you telling people?
Oh, I am so excited for you, and don't be daunted. And everything is intimidating until we've done it before. Done it many times. I'm remembering how when my mom was encouraging me to tie my shoes, and I said, Mom, the Velcro is really working out just fine. Let's not add any layers of unneeded complexity here. And so, everything is intimidating until we've done it a handful of times, and ideally with people that we love. And so certainly the internet is so here for you in 1,000 ways, but in ways people are here for us also in ways that internet will never be here. So I wonder, who is in your community? Who do you already know who is gardening? And maybe there's a Facebook group or other ways that you can learn and be connected. But the more that you can have actual embodied connections with people who are on the ground and going to show you exactly what's happening in their soil, who want to come and are so excited to see what's happening in your little garden, that's the magic. And certainly, at our website, fruitionseeds.com, there's always been more on the learn side than on the shop side of our website, even when we were selling seeds. And there you'll find free online courses about seed starting and composting and container gardening and seed saving, all kinds of things. And of course, lots of blogs and webinars that lots of people listen to, like podcasts. And for every single variety, hundreds of vegetables, flowers, herbs, we have extensive growing information specific for each one of those that has written information as well as videos. And we made them for you, especially for your great grandchildren, Evan. And so that's always a resource to, and yeah, but finding the people at arm's length who are the neighbors, the strangers maybe, who will become the friends, becoming the neighbors, so that we aren't doing this alone.
Evan, do you want to jump in with how you feel like people might get started and what your experience has been?
I guess I'd say I totally agree with Petra. Having a garden, growing a few plants and seeing if you can save some seeds or cook up some vegetables for you and your family, it does not need to be a big endeavor, and it is absolutely an excuse to make a relationship with neighbors or with your library. They might have a lot of resources or connections with folks who have seeds or have experience. And it's going to be completely specific to you. It's a beautiful thing because it's actually pretty hard to abstract. Different people's backyards have different soils and sunlight. And of course, we all live in different climates and microclimates. And for me, I guess I just had to embrace failing. I just had to start treating every single seed I put in the ground as an experiment and as a potential failure and as a chance to learn. And once it stopped being like really high expectations, then I actually started learning a lot more. And then it became intuitive. And I think if you can find someone to spend time with for who it is intuitive, then that can happen even quicker. So I just say mostly have fun with it.
Well, let me ask both of you. I've got questions from listeners on a few of the basics here. Grant wants to know he says, do I need a heat mat? You want to start with that one, Evan? Does Grant need a heat mat?
It depends what Grant is growing. There's a lot of seeds that you can put directly into the ground once it's warm enough, including this time of year, that you don't even need to start in a cell or in a tray or in potting mix. You can just put them right in the ground, which is the simplest way to get gardening right, is to like clear a patch of soil and put seeds in the ground. There's some plants like tomatoes, notoriously, that really have to be started ahead of the season. And in order to grow tomatoes, for example, you would need a heat mat, yeah. And Petra has so many amazing resources on starting seeds indoors, and there might be a bit of an investment up front based on what you're doing. But if that's not an option, then you could choose different crops because, like I said, some things you don't need hardly any equipment for.
Petra, can you add to that? And maybe even, I appreciate the email, Grant. I don't even know what a heat mat is in this context, Petra.
A heat mat, imagine instead of a blanket over your bed, imagine a blanket underneath your seedlings. So it's emanating warmth, just enough warmth. The average germination optimization temperature for most seeds is around 75 degrees, 75, 78 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just a little warmer than most of us keep our homes. And so that little bit of extra heat helps seeds just fly open rather than sitting there and thinking about it. And so depending on the seed, especially like perennial flowers and herbs, and like Evan mentioned, the tomatoes, peppers, eggplants of the world, they've evolved much closer to the equator than we happen to be here. And so having that little extra touch of heat just makes all the difference for their vigor and their health. So, but honestly, unless you're growing tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, or lots of perennial herbs and flowers, they're nice to have, utterly unnecessary. And I'm so grateful that you lifted that up, Evan, that so many seeds just go right in the ground. They go right in the ground, and you don't even have to worry about starting them inside. Because kind of the other half of the equation, if you're going to be investing in a heat mat, you probably are also going to be needing a grow light, because the sunlight coming in out of your full south exposure window is most assuredly not enough in our short seasons for peppers, tomatoes, eggplants. And so it turns into a whole very fun project if that's really what you want to do. And for many of us, that is a lot of extra TLC that doesn't actually translate into healthier, happier, and thus more abundant plants. So keeping it simple, especially to start. It definitely is, like, if you're just getting started in seed growing at all, and certainly seed starting indoors. Yeah, I recommend resist starting with tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. That's like going to get your PhD. Show up to kindergarten with your lettuce.
Nothing wrong with lettuce. That's very good. Petra, Katie wants to know, what do they recommend for weed suppression in raised beds?
There are as many ways, and I'm sure you know this, Katie. There are so many ways to garden. There's as many ways to garden as there are gardeners. And so what I would recommend in my life is very specific to me and my specific circumstances. And I would love to see where you're gardening and what kinds of materials you have access to and what kinds of plants you're growing. There's just so many variables. I'm a really big fan of, if you can find seed-free straw, which mostly doesn't exist, but if you can find seed-free organic straw, that's an amazing way to be putting in, a mulch that's going to suppress weeds as well as maintain moisture in your raised beds.
Okay.
But there's so many other great options.
Anything to add, Evan Hoyt?
I'm pretty old-fashioned. I have a hand hoe and a digging fork, and I pull them up, and that's most of it. But the good news is, if you stay on top of seeds, they usually will go down, because if the weeds themselves aren't able to produce more seeds, it can get better year after year. So if it seems really overwhelming, just know that staying on top of it will mean that in a few years you might have a garden bed less likely to need a lot of weeding.
And Katie follows up to ask each of you, what is the most difficult vegetable you've managed to grow? I think, Petra, you said start in the kindergarten class. What is the PhD level?
That also is so relative. I think for me personally, growing artichokes is so deliciously satisfying and extraordinarily challenging. They want to survive. They need a little winter, but kind of think San Francisco style winter, not Rochester, New York style winter. And so they need to go through a winter to then go to seed, i.e. make an artichoke. The artichoke is the bloom that will then become the seeds. And so to grow artichokes here, you basically have to start them in the middle of winter. And then as they're like young, but thinking about enzymatically growing into adulthood, you, as transplants, tuck them outside so they experience, like now, spring, and not freezing cold, but temperatures below 38, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And then after a few weeks of that quote winter, tucking them out. And if you were successful in making them think that they experienced quote winter, you will grow artichokes. And so they've been some of the most tasty vegetables I've ever eaten in my life, and certainly the vegetables I have worked the absolute hardest for.
All right, Evan, what's your PhD level?
That's cool. I've never grown artichokes. One thing I thought of was that one year we grew potatoes from seeds, which, have you done that, Petra? I had never done it before, but
yes.
Basically, potatoes are almost always grown from potatoes. They're not like, let's say, a tomato where you plant a tomato seed. You take a chunk of a potato and it grows an appendage out of itself. It's a clone. But it is possible to find and buy and grow potatoes from seeds. And it's a fun thing to do if you're like me, you're an amateur plant breeder and you want to try out some new genetics, grow some never before seen potato varieties and see what happens to do well. I don't think it's a PhD level vegetable, but it was really hard for us because They require a huge amount of light, but they don't want to be too hot. So your indoor conditions are tricky. And then, of course, where I live just happens to be incredibly soggy. So growing potatoes is always hard, no matter how they started. And that was a fun one. We had a couple varieties of potatoes that did really well that we cloned from that year onwards.
Okay, Katie, I hope we helped there. I've got a couple of emails there to get to. See why I'll get to. I got to get our only break of the hour in. And listeners, you know the email address as always, connections@wxxi.org. The phone number, if you want to call, it's 844-295-TALK, 844-295-8255. You can join the chat on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. We're talking to Petra Page-Mann, Evan Hoyt, about growing, about seeds, planting, doing it as best we can. I was going to say doing it right, but I don't know if there's a right and a wrong. There's just a more effective and less effective, and they are the ones to know. So we'll keep answering your questions and come right back on Connections.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Mary Cariola Center, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, believing an informed and engaged community is a connected one. marycariola.org.
Nickel is a key ingredient in things like stainless steel and some batteries, but in Indonesia, nickel mining takes a high toll on the environment and public health.
It almost looks like there's a forest fire with how thick the smog is. We can definitely tell it's harder to breathe here. We're all wearing masks.
I'm Scott Detrow, on the ground reporting on Indonesia's nickel boom on All Things Considered from NPR News.
This afternoon at 4.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. All right, Rory wants to know, why are my seedlings always so weak? And I think the word he's using is leggy. That's not a context I know. I'll start with Petra. Weak and leggy. What does that mean to you, Petra?
Leggy transplants have long legs, and that means long stems. Their stems are long, narrow, often very pale, weak, fragile, and that is a function of light. If your plants are stressed for light, they are getting taller, stretching, reaching for the light, and if they can't find it, that is what happens. They become leggy. And yeah, and I would love to just apologize to all of us endeavoring to grow better plants in the world inside a consumer culture where there are lots of grow lights that are sold as grow lights that are absolutely not grow lights. And it's really fascinating. I look up at the sky, the light from the sun, and I have a light on at night in our house. And to me, it's just light and there's brightness. But to plants, they know very specifically the wavelengths that they're receiving or not. Specifically, they need the red and the blue wavelengths of light. And P.S., if we remember our color wheels, getting back to kindergarten and PhD level, the green is in between. And because green is in between red and blue, that's why plants reflect green to our eyes as we perceive them, because they are actively jumping on all of those, the immediate surrounding red and blue wavelengths. And so I am sad to say that there are lots of grow lights that are offering light, but are not specifically focusing on those red and blue wavelengths. And so you can spend a lot of money and your plants will tell you if you actually bought a grow light or not. So there's sometimes you can have the grow light raised too high above the seedlings. So try lowering it. Can often make a difference. Every grow light from a different brand is going to be a little different. So I'm not very good at reading instruction manuals myself, though I might encourage you to take a peek because they might have recommendations.
Okay.
If it's a leggy transplant, it's best to start over and to not try to plant out those seedlings. I'm sad to say. They might be tasty microgreens, depending on the species.
Anything to add, Evan Hoyt?
Nope, I think Petra said it all.
All right, Rory, tell me if that helps. I do hope that helps. Leggy, that's such an interesting term there. But look, that's why we're learning from Petra and Evan Hoyt, who are joining us to talk today about how we're doing with growing and what we ought to know. And we've got a pile of your other questions here. Let's see here. This is Melinda from Seeded Earth Farm. Says, I hope everyone listening to this episode knows what a gift Petra and Matt are to this world. They are showing us the way to a much brighter, more just future. Over a month ago, I started a tray of, Aji Dulce peppers from seeds that were saved from last year's crop. The seeds from that crop were originally gifted from Petra and Matt. Today, I drove out to Fraser Garlic to trade that tray of peppers for a small bag of seed potatoes. On my drive home, this interview came across my radio. How beautiful is that? The world Petra is talking about can exist, and I'm so thankful they are doing the hard thing of showing us how it is done. Melinda, Seeded Earth Farm in Irondequoit. First of all, any reaction to that first, Petra?
I'm just crying. Thank you, Melinda. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, peppers. Thank you, potatoes.
And let me just add to her point or ask you a follow-up there, Petra. So she's responding to what you said earlier about your views on how we interact with each other and the expectations we have and the way that you have decided to live. Is that gift culture? I mean, how do you define the phrase gift culture?
Oh, what a good question. You might expect me to have a really pithy elevator pitch, and I just don't. When we trust and love each other, we don't have strings attached to what we give, to what we receive. And in fact, we lose track of giving and receiving. They are synonymous when done well. And that's the best I got. How the sun is just so endlessly generous. And there are ways that we can say thank you to the sun. Blueberries are so endlessly generous. And there are ways that we can say thank you to blueberries. And how do we practice trusting that even our emptiness and our vulnerability that our needs can in fact be gifts. I'm going to work on that elevator pitch, Evan. Thanks for deeply inspiring me.
Evan Hoyt, you want to tell us what you think of when you think of gift culture?
I think that's beautifully said. I think also there's an aspect of gift culture that is, I think, of work. Like, I think there are basically these muscles we have, or these skills we have, or these capacities we have. And in this culture, in the dominant culture, it's really easy to let them atrophy. I'm thinking about things like the ability to ask for help as frequently as you need it, to turn to neighbors and family and friends and make requests and really trust that they'll say yes or no as is appropriate, and to receive other people's big requests and to be able to say no and yes. And the gifts of offering each other support, offering each other even praise. I think that gift culture for me is about building those capacities together, even though most of us grew up in a way that doesn't require a lot of those, right? We can buy what we need. We can sell what we have. And gift culture is kind of choosing to say, if we're going to stop doing that from each other, if we're going to stop withholding goods from where they need to go and transactionalizing our lives that much, what do we need to do in order to have the relational capacities to navigate each other's lives and each other's needs and maintain our relationships well, especially beyond the human sphere? How do we have those same healthy relationships with seeds and with plants and with animals?
Well, here's an email from CY who says, he says, I'll give things away and I don't ask for money, but sometimes people want to give me something, even $1 or $2, because they want to feel that they've earned it. Too often we feel like charity means admitting we are weak, but to be human is to be, at least in large part, vulnerable and weak. What do you think, Evan Hoyt?
I think that's beautifully said. I think a big part of what this whole gift practice is about is coming to accept our interdependence on each other and to lean into that. And it is vulnerable. And also, I've experienced the same thing. It's sometimes really hard to receive a gift. I actually think of those muscles I was talking about earlier. That might be the one that most of us need the most work on. It's much easier to give a gift than receive it, is what I've found for myself. And there's a strong impulse sometimes to say, thank you so much. Well, let me give you something, anything, a couple bucks or something that feels equivalent. And I think most of us have been raised to avoid being on the hook, right? It's like, I need to give something back so that I don't owe this person something. It's uncomfortable. And I respect that a lot. And when we are able to make clear to others the ways in which we can be supported, I think that can be cool. Like Petra and Matthew's work, they're really good at saying these seeds are offered as a gift. Also, separately, we do have a big budget request that we'd like to fill this year, and we have other material needs, but we're separating the two. It's not, you can only have the seeds if you support us. And the more and more we can lean into that moment where it's actually asymmetrical and we feel like we owe someone something or they owe us something, and the more and more we can let that feeling grow until we feel like we owe each other everything and there's actually no way we're going to settle the books because we're making our lives possible for each other. That to me is when we're doing gift culture.
Petra CY says to be human is to be, in some ways, vulnerable and weak. What do you think?
You know, was watching a bald eagle fly over me this morning here in the Hudson River, and it was carrying this great big fish, this silver fish in their talons. And I thought to myself, wow, what would it feel like to have talons? And what would it be like to have great big wings that could just fly away from so much danger? And humans are kind of uniquely vulnerable beings. We don't run particularly fast, especially compared to other top predators. And yeah, if we aren't sharing and caring, if we're not actively cultivating trust in our groups, we're the words weak. And what was the other phrase?
Vulnerable.
Yeah, we're so vulnerable. So I think one of the strengths of our species is that we care for each other and that we share what we have. And that doesn't mean giving everything away instantly and insisting that we have nothing ever. But it does mean that we loosen our grips on like what is mine and what is yours, and respecting the independence that is so paradoxically nested within these layers of interdepending on each other and in our ecosystems and the wider world. And yeah, so I think our vulnerability it can be I love that Malcolm Gladwell quote of advantages are not always advantages and disadvantages are not always disadvantages. And what if our vulnerability actually was a strength?
See why, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the note. And you can see why when Petra's on the show, it's never just about growing seeds, although it's about growing seeds. So let me get back to that. And Petra's friend Elizabeth Henderson writes in to say, many farmers prefer to plant seed that is related with fungicides to keep the seeds from rotting. How does the chemical coating affect the soil? And does it get into the plant or just stay in the outside? Petra?
Oh, Liz, I love you. And thank you for asking questions for over 80 years in this world and specifically in our community. And I do not know. That's a wonderful question. And I'm so curious to ask some of our friends. And please, when you learn more, let us know too.
Yeah.
Profound implications.
Yeah. Evan Hoyt, do you think about that question? Are you concerned about chemical coatings and where they're going, et cetera?
I do not know much about chemical coatings either or fungicide effects, but I can say that for myself and for a lot of small farmers and growers, building healthy fungal communities in the soil is like of critical importance, right? It's like we think about what's in the seeds, we think about what we're adding to the soil, but what the soil's doing on its own is such a massive part of what allows healthy gardening and farming to happen. So for people who don't have that level of background, I'll just say that, but I don't have any expert info now.
Thank you for the note there, Liz. And Elizabeth Henderson, always appreciate hearing from her. And let's see here. Well, let me turn back to our guest because we should get a little bit more in the way of Seeds 101. And one of the common questions that we've gotten over the years is how long until maturity? So when am I planting and when should I expect maturity, if that's the right word, Petra? So let me start with Petra on this one. Typically, how long we plant seeds, how long to maturity?
Different stories for every single variety, even within tomatoes and within lettuce, there will be different harvest dates expected. And there's just so many other variables as well. Temperature, soil quality, access to light. And yeah, so there's honestly so many variables. Specifically for Fruition's varieties, you'll see on our website and on each one of our packets too, those harvest, when you can anticipate harvest. And we always share them within windows. Often you'll see there's very like 62 days to maturity. And we'll generally say 58 to 64, and wanting to just honor that everything is within a range. Yeah, so much more to say, but there's a tiny bite.
Okay. Before I get back to phone calls, Patrick emailed to offer, in his words, a healthy dose of cynicism. So here's Patrick. He says, I live the life that I work in the land. I'm working the land. I observe the economics, and I've had to charge a lot of money to exist, barely. And I wonder what the AI layoffs are going to do to my clientele and to my business. I build and maintain gardens for people, any type of gardens. I can do them all. But what does it matter if no one has money to pay for them, especially the people who cannot do it for themselves? And he says maybe with the AI movement, enough corporate layoffs are going to happen. It's going to force us to go back to the time when everyone had chickens and one cow and growing space to trade seeds. But we are living in a world of generational shrinkage where kids have to live with their parents longer. They can't afford property with space to do what this hour has been talking about. People will be forced into smaller units that go upwards in the air and don't have land to do this on. So Patrick is not feeling the gift economy. He's feeling a little cynicism, he says. And I wonder what you would say to Patrick.
That heartbreak is so vital for how we survive this time, and allowing ourselves to feel the despair and to feel the intensity of such vast unknowns. I have to imagine that's what every single seed experiences and is considering when they're deciding to germinate or not. And yeah, I so appreciate your analysis and the ways that you are longing for more care and connection, and the ways that you see our culture answering questions in incredibly narrow, shallow ways. And it speaks to me of how hungry we are for real connection and real care. And maybe dollars can help, but in certain ways, they certainly are a crutch, but a crutch is an important healing tool, not as a lifelong health mechanism.
All right. Evan Hoyt, you want to add to that briefly?
Yeah, I'd just say that I really appreciate the message. And I think that no matter what the specific analysis is or the prediction of what's about to happen, I think for most people right now who are paying attention, right now is a bit of a breaking moment. I think a lot of the stories we were raised with are proving to not be true, or they're not going to hold. And it's scary to think about the security of my family going forward and how we're going to sustain ourselves. And I think for me, I understand how that can lead to a sort of cynicism around some of what Petra and I are talking about. And also, I think in a lot of ways, we get to choose how we're going to try to secure ourselves. I think that the mode of security that I was raised in, which is to kind of like accumulate money and buy some land and kind of corner off my little area, it's not working for a lot of people, especially young people. And it gets to open new questions into how do we want to make ourselves secure? What do we want to be doing now so that our kids and grandkids are more likely to be able to thrive? And for us, I think a lot of that is just focusing on relationships, on building loving relationships capable of taking care of each other. And in the transition space between the stories we had and the stories we're building, there's so much friction, there's so much heartbreak, and I share it.
Patrick, thank you for the email. We're tight, down to our last 90 seconds. I've got Andy in Rochester on the phone. Hi, Andy. Keep it tight, please.
Yes. Hi. I just wanted to comment on something. I love this program, absolutely, but also I wanted to mention I saw something about mulch containing herbicides, and it's like wiping out people's gardens. And I was wondering if we could address that briefly.
Toxic mulch. Okay. Petra, heard anything about that?
I do not know anything about that, but I think the more we ask questions, the more we can be informed, and then the more we can share.
Yeah, I guess the question is, what is the mulch treated with, and what would the effect be? Evan, you know anything about that?
No, I haven't heard anything about that.
Okay, so Andy, it is a good question. We don't have information to bear on that right now. And if you find anything, Andy, email me separately. Follow up, edawson@wxxi.org. I'd love to hear more about that. 30 seconds, guys. So, Petra, people are going to find more at fruitionseeds.com. Still there. Still doing the Fruition Seeds, just with a very different model. Anything you want to leave people with, Petra? Go ahead.
We have so many other opportunities for people to be receiving seeds in the next month and for months to come all summer. But yeah, we'll actually be in Rochester on Saturday, May 23rd, and also at the Rochester Public Market at the plant swap at the public market, the May 15th, the Friday. So and lots of other events on the farm and in Geneva, Canandaigua, Buffalo. So there are abundant ways to share abundant seeds with your friends. I look so forward.
Petra, thank you for the time, as always. Happy spring, no matter what it looks like out there, and come talk to us again sometime.
I look so forward, Evan. And thank you also, Evan ×2. What a joy today.
Thank you very much, Evan Hoyt. That's who Petra's talking about, a grower researcher at the University of Vermont. Thank you for sharing with us and spending some time with us this hour, Evan.
Thanks for having me. It was super fun.
Great conversation this hour. Good luck to all the growers out there. We're all going to be great. We're going to do it. We're going to be great. Thank you from all of us at Connections for finding us, for being with us. We are back with you tomorrow on member-supported public media.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.